The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this broadcast or podcast without the express written consent of Spaced Out Radio or Spaced Out Radio Limited is strictly prohibited. Listener discretion is advised. Are you experienced?
Stop right there!
From high atop the mountains of British Columbia to you listening around the world, this is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
They let us play with all our toys, they let us think that we're big boys, they let us make the louder noise, but we ain't rule the world. They let us think we're Superman.
You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, on iTunes and TuneIn. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, on Facebook at Spaced Out Radio Show, or on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show.
I try to act so cool, but you know I'm just a fool for you. I will stop till I reach the top just to be there with you.
Dave, oh Dave, are you playing with Bigfoot and aliens again?
Dad, you gotta stop haunting the ghosts. It's scaring them.
All right, seriously, put down the pointy sticks.
Oh, the deeper I fall.
Okay! Game on! Game on! Game
The password is...
All right.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride on Spaced Out Radio. Mr. Bumblefoot, Dave is ready for liftoff.
I try to act so cool, but you know I'm just a fool for you.
Seriously, Dave? Really? Aren't you a little old for a tinfoil hat?
Hello, Toby. Bye-bye. Nephew. Bye-bye.
Please take your seat above us. We're with you. It's time to pick up. Start. 2, 1. Boost ignition and lift off.
I'm such a lucky guy, 'cause after all this time, it's like the deeper I go, the deeper I fall. The deeper I go, the deeper I fall.
Good evening and welcome to a new week of Spaced Out Radio. Tonight, I am your host, Dave Scott. It's great to have you along for the ride on this Monday, October 23rd, Tuesday, October 24th. If you're on the East Coast or across the pond, hope you had a great day and night wherever you are. We are live right here in the Great White North. And on top of the mountains of central British Columbia, as we are here 7 days a week for your listening needs. We welcome in everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Newnan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are live as well at the United Public Radio Network on 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. We are also live at spacedoutradio.com, Spreaker, KTLK, The Fringe FM, Renegade Talk Radio out of Las Vegas, the High Plains Talk Radio Network, and if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Like our music, get your horns up for Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL, formerly of Guns N' Roses, currently of Art of Anarchy and Sons of Apollo. Bumblefoot is the official music of this show. Hey, we're all over social media, so you can give us a follow anywhere. We're on Twitter, at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, you can follow me at Dave Scott, SOR. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Listen to us on iHeartRadio in the United States. TalkStream Live, tune us in on TuneIn, download and subscribe to our shows on iTunes. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. Now, if you want to take part in this show, you have to do me a favor, because we're very audience-oriented. You got to sign into one of the chat rooms, either on Revolution Radio, Spreaker, the UPRN chat room, or on Facebook at the SOR Space Travelers Club. Or if you're on Twitter, be like Michelle, Sonny, and Canadian Joe, and use the hashtag SpacedOutRadio. I will get to your questions and comments in there as well. Now, if you head to our website, for $5 a month, you can become a member of the SOR Space Travelers Club. You can also shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. You can read the encounter online, read my latest blog, fill out an SOR Sightlines report if you've had something strange or weird happen to you. And we got great video viewing from Tim Doyle from UFO Seekers and Leslie Mitchell Clark's Contact TV. You know, we talk about UFOs a lot on this show, and for some, it is way too much. But for others who are like me, trying to put the puzzle pieces together for their own experiences, to have the ability to learn about these subjects is all too important. You see, I make no bones about it. I'm Canadian, and I'm pretty proud of it. Got the tattoo of the flag on me. But being Canadian is also about understanding our quite reserved culture about certain topics, and aliens and UFOs are one of those topics. Canada doesn't celebrate the experience. We're kind of, I don't even know the word to explain it. We are just kind of reserved that way, unless we're winning gold at the Olympics or World Junior Hockey Championships. That's different. For some, the topic of UFOs is still quite taboo up here, even though we have some of the most premier researchers on the planet, like Grant Cameron, Stanton Friedman, Victor Vigiani, and the late Bob Mitchell. But for many, they have a story. And this is where MUFON Canada comes in. Stu Bundy is a former NCAA football player turned television reporter turned president of MUFON Canada. Established in 1969, this organization has been fielding stories from coast to coast to coast, learning about this phenomenon. You see, our Roswell, which happened in Shag Harbor in Nova Scotia, the majority of Canadians have never even heard of it. And to the field of ufology north of the border, the Canadian experience can no longer be covered up. Stu Bundy, welcome to Spaced Out Radio for the first time. How are you doing?
Great, Dave. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you on the show, not just because you're a major player in MUFON Canada, but because, you know, I always like talking about Canadian subjects on this show. Even though the majority of our audience is in the beautiful United States, I think the knowledge that they are able to gain from listening to Canadian stories as well really gives a whole new perspective of this phenomena, that it's not just in the United States, but it really is North America and worldwide when it comes to UFOs, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely it is. And you know, MUFON International has over 25 countries in it now. The majority of the sightings come into the United States, followed by Canada, the UK, Australia. It doesn't mean that there aren't sightings from other countries. It's just that they aren't being reported to MUFON. So, as you mentioned, you know, we've been around since 1969. We consider ourselves the voice of reason. And so, we don't tend to jump off the deep end and say, wow, that's a light in the sky, must be a UFO. We have a bunch of tools and software that we try and figure out what it is. And if it isn't, and if we can't figure out what it is, well, then we classify it as an unknown. Again, that doesn't mean it's a spaceship with little green aliens. It just means that we can't identify it to the best of our knowledge. But having said that, it'll basically come down to two things. It's ours or it's theirs. And that's where it gets really interesting for us, and that's why we're in it. We're volunteers, and it's, the old joke is we pay to play. Our membership's $5 a month, but, anyone out there who would like to support us, and it's okay if I give the plug now?
Please do. Please go right ahead.
So it's $5 a month to be a member of MUFON, and with that you get a monthly e-journal or a hardcover journal. You get email alerts, updates on what's happening, and discounts at our store and symposiums and conferences around North America. But as I said, we're volunteers, and it's just it's a hobby. It's not, well, if it's an obsession, it's a good obsession because it keeps us busy. But we feel like we just need to know the truth. And the other people out there who say, "Wow, come on, are these things real? Wouldn't they have landed on the White House lawn by now?" Well, they did buzz the White House in the 50s, and we do have indisputable proof through photos, videos, implants. It goes on and on. So we do have the proof that people want. It's just a lot of people just don't want to believe for whatever reason.
Well, let's get to you then. What led you down the UFO path?
Well, as a kid, I was always doing, all my reports and all my projects were always UFOs. Started out, I had crazy dreams as a kid. I don't think I was ever an experiencer, and at some point, I think I'll probably want to do some regression and find out, why I was so obsessed at such a young age with this. And then back in 2000, my wife and I thought we saw something. 2:30 in the morning, we live on a golf course just north of Toronto, and we saw this incredibly bright light going up and down and back and forth just over the tree line. And so we looked at it through binoculars. It was the most amazingly bright light we'd ever seen at 2:30 in the morning in the sky just over the golf course. And so I called the cops the next day. There was even a UFO radio show on a Toronto station. I called them, and they were going to bring me on their show to talk about my experience. And then a couple of days later, before I went on the radio, the police called back and said that it was the local chopper, it was the local police with their chopper, and they were heading to a break-in at the golf course clubhouse. And I said, okay, great. Well, thanks for letting me know. So then I called up the golf course next. And I said, hey, anything happened Saturday night, Sunday morning? And they said, oh, yeah, we were broken into. The cops were here. They had a chopper in the sky. It was great and all that stuff. So that was the end of that mystery. But by then, I'd already signed up for MUFON, and I ordered the course to be a field investigator, and that was back in 2000. So ever since then, we've been working on cases and solving mysteries, and the ones we haven't solved are pretty crazy. And which I can go through a few of those, over during the evening, for sure with you.
There are so many people out there, Stu, who have had the experience of seeing something that just doesn't match up to what they think are regular human aircraft flying in the sky. And I realize there has to be some subjectiveness to it. There has to be some skepticism, and, you have to take the report as it were. What made you decide that this is something that you wanted to look into on a regular basis? Because let's face it, there are people out there in this field looking for their 15 minutes of fame. They would love to get the movie deal that Travis Walton did. They would love to be able to, be on radio shows and talk about what they've seen or be in the local newspaper. Yet there is a reality that not everything we see up in the sky is of alien orientation.
Yeah, I totally agree. Why I got into it is I've always been, I was in the media. Like yourself, you're in the media right now. And I just needed to know the answers. I always wanted to dig and find out what's the real reason behind things, whether I was interviewing an athlete or a politician. I always felt I needed to get under their skin to find out the real reason. And then at the same time, I was doing that, and I played a little professional football as well. But I was pursuing this UFO obsession. And, when I joined MUFON, I had the opportunity to go to England one summer about 4 years ago. Toured a lot of the crop circles in Wiltshire, and then spent some time at Stonehenge. And there's another incredible stone circle up the road from Stonehenge that doesn't get a lot of PR. It's the Avebury Stone Circle, which is 10,000 years old. I mean, just crazy stuff. And then had the opportunity also to visit Area 51. That itself is pretty crazy in the middle of July when it's 110 degrees. But the good thing about that is if you go to the back gate at Rachel, Nevada, there's that little greasy spoon called the Little Alien, and the beer is cold. The burgers are greasy, but you are in air conditioning and not 110 degrees out. But I was always inquisitive. I want to find the answer. So that was sort of a perfect thing when I got out of the media, to keep digging on something. And it really is, to me, one of the biggest questions in the world, or of all time. Are we alone? Which we aren't. And how long have they been here? Well, for a long time, from a lot of experts say.
Well, I've stated many times on this show, and I'm sure you would agree, that next to the second coming of Jesus Christ himself, aliens and alien life outside of our planet is the next best story and the next biggest story in mankind's history more than anything. And I strongly believe there is something going on. There is some sort of phenomena. I'm an experiencer myself, and there is no way that anybody could ever change my mind on that. And there are a lot of people out there who are convinced that they have been a part of it. But a lot of people, when it comes to MUFON, whether it's in the United States or whether it's in Canada, may be a little bit confused on what you look for. So when you guys are taking reports of potential sightings or contact, what does a person go through?
Well, first, they'll go to our website, MUFON.com. They'll follow the prompts. Would you like to put in a sighting report? They'll go there. They'll fill it out. They'll write their blurb. And then it goes into a big, huge case management system. We call it our CMS, which is a massive piece of software that all these sighting reports from all the world come into this, and then it gets spit back out to the areas, to the directors, and then it gets assigned to the local field investigator. And first of all, what we're doing is we're looking for just basic information. How was it a light in the sky? How high above the horizon was it? What was the speed? That sort of thing. And the first software we usually use is a thing called Stellarium. It's a free software. Anybody listening right now can download it. And you can go, it gives you in real time what is in the sky right now. They'll show you all the constellations, the planets that are visible. It'll show you every single satellite in the sky and when it's crossing. The International Space Station it accounts for a lot of sightings. And we can also go back in time. So say, for example, someone put in a sighting report last week, 11:30 p.m. on last Tuesday. We can go back to exactly that. We can turn it to if it's north, south, northeast, that part of the sky, and we can see what is in the sky at that point. A lot of times we can figure out that way. If we think it's maybe the conventional aircraft or some kind of a passenger craft, then we use a thing called Flight Tracker 24. And what you can do is you pull up the nearest airport, and it'll show you the planes coming in and out of it, whether it's New York, Toronto, LA, what have you. And when you click on the plane icon, it'll tell you what airline it's from and the flight number. And if it's a Boeing, if it's a Airbus, what have you. So that's another one. Another good one is we have a bunch of weather websites that we check, because a lot of times when you get the witness on the phone and you're trying to get information from them, it doesn't really jibe. So if they say, well, it was a light in the sky, it was glowing, and it was moving north to south. If the wind was north to south, well, then that's a good indication maybe it's a Chinese lantern, for example. If it's going against the wind, well, then you might have something there. So there's a bunch of different things like that we do, just very simple, CIS 101 investigating. But mostly, and when you think about it, we are investigating the witness almost as much as we are the evidence, because it's almost like we are on well, we have to take their word for it. We have to trust them. So we investigate the witness. If they're credible, well, then you make the decision on whether you want to believe them or not, if we don't have enough evidence. A lot of times we'll close cases as insufficient data, information only, things like that. We really want to close them either unknown, and then it can go either way there, or an IFO, identified flying object, which it can be man-made, celestial objects, things like that. But that's typically how we do it. We go through those softwares first, and the majority of the time we can figure it out.
Out of all the cases you hear, how many do you define as true UFO reports?
It really boils down to 3 to 5%.
And what would cause you to choose whether or not it is a real report or not?
If we can eliminate all of the items we're looking for, conventional craft, International Space Station, satellite, shooting star. We had one over Toronto yesterday. This fellow was, oh my God, he was 100 million% sure, he said. It turned out to be the moon. And we figured that out with stellarium in 30 seconds. But also then when you get the witness on the phone, you do a complete interview, get his written statement or her written statement, and they're credible. You can't figure it out. There's high strangeness, and that's when we will close something as an unknown.
The reason why
and
I'm
of course,
asking,
if there's video or photo, if there's video,
yes,
video or photographic evidence as well, trace elements, things like that. Well, then that also leads us to, because that's what we really want or looking for. Is we're looking for photo, video, multiple witnesses that were not together from different spaces, different areas, and we've had a few of those. So that's corroborating evidence.
I realize that, Canada is a big country. You have 25 investigators in MUFON Canada that are spread out across the nation. And realistically, the way our population is spread out, it is difficult to get to some of these areas. But Stu, I do have to ask, as someone who has put information online and had people who are armchair critiquing it on their home computers, how do you make sure that you're just not blowing something off because it's irrelevant compared to how, investigating a proper technique where you're going to give everybody the benefit of the doubt to what they saw, because obviously they're calling you guys or getting in touch with you guys for a reason. Do you know what I'm saying by that?
Sure. No, and we do give people the benefit of the doubt. And, after we do our investigation, then we decide whether the witness, number one, is credible, or if their photos or videos are credible. So we have, for example, our chief investigator for Canada used to teach photography in college, at Canadian colleges. So he knows his stuff. And then if we really get stumped, there's Mark D'Antonio down in the United States. He is the top photographic analysis person for MUFON International, and again, he really knows his stuff as well. So rarely do we have to send stuff to Mark, but when we do, most of the time he'll agree with what we've come up with. So we do give people the benefit of the doubt. It's just that without photos or video, it's tough to make a call on something unless you have multiple witnesses. And then again, with this CMS we have, our case management system, we can go back decades, and we'll punch in a town, we'll punch in what the light was or what the shape of the craft was to see if there's any historical data on that sighting as well. But no, we give people the benefit of the doubt, but sometimes they just aren't credible, and we'll close the case that way.
Do you have trigger words or trigger sentences or anything that leads you to the skepticism of whether or not it is a real case that you are following?
No, not really. But what we're trained to do is sort of like when you're a police officer investigating and talking to a witness, we will ask them to repeat the story. We will ask them to repeat what they wrote. We will take the story and we'll start from the end and start towards the beginning and see if they continue to be have the same story. So that's pretty much what we're looking for is them to not change their story, not to have mistakes. And also, when you talk to somebody on the phone or you see them in real life and you interview them, you can tell by their mannerisms. Sometimes you can tell by their mannerisms, unless they're a good actor, if they're fidgety and nervous for certain reasons. You can tell if they're nervous for having perceived an event. And a lot of folks that we talk to who are actual experiencers, like yourself, some of them show signs of PTSD. It's so traumatic that they really have a hard time dealing with it. And in that case, in Canada, we would advise folks to we'll hook them up with a woman, Leslie Mitchell-Clark out of Toronto. She's a hypnotherapist, and she is certified by MUFON in the ERT program. That is the Experiencer Research Team. And it was started, and it's still headed up by Kathleen Marden, who is world-renowned for helping experiencers. Her family goes way back. Her aunt and uncle were Betty and Barney Hill, one of the first publicly sort of famous people for being abducted in the 60s. And so, in fact, Kathleen's going to be coming to our big conference, the ACE, which is the Alien Cosmic Expo in Toronto in June. Leslie Mitchell-Clark will be there assisting her as well. But that's what we do when people in Canada reach out for help, because MUFON is really twofold. Number one, we are here to educate the public. We are here to make public what we find with these sightings, so you can go online and see it. And number three, if someone reaches out, an experiencer reaches out for help, we'll move them in a certain direction. But again, it's one of these genres that you find all sorts of people from all walks of life. Most of them are very sincere, and whether or not it was a real experience or it was a real ET experience, they believe that something happened. And then, of course, you get a small percentage that are unfortunately mentally ill, and it's sometimes hard to figure that out because we're not professionals, we're not health professionals. But it's we're here to help people. That's the bottom line.
Credibility says a lot with everything that we do, whether it's journalism, whether that's investigation, whether it's anything that we do, to be absolutely blunt. How do you stay on point to keeping MUFON Canada a credible source for people who are having these experiences? Because for a lot of people, it's not just seeing a UFO in the sky, it is actually having contact or being abducted, which takes it to a whole different level.
Right. Well, I mean, just the history of the organization and the fact that we have physicists and engineers and doctors and airplane pilots, all these kind of folks that are on our board of directors and are running the organization, doctors, and so that lends a lot of credibility. And the fact that we do say we're the voice of reason. Our mission statement is the scientific study of UFOs for the benefit of humanity. We don't sell people's stories and we don't make money off it. So that in itself, says a lot. And I think people understand that and they see that.
Is it something that you enjoy? Do you still really enjoy the chase?
Yes, I do. Unfortunately, in my role now, it's more administrative and, sort of expanding the organization, setting up the provincial directors and chief investigators for different provinces. And because Canada is like a state. The entire country is like a state chapter in MUFON. There are, roughly, 400 to 500 members, MUFON members across Canada. And out of that, as you mentioned, we have 25 field investigators. Worldwide, there's 5,000 MUFON members. We hope to grow it up to, as many as we can to keep the organization going because we do believe it's really good work. At some point, I'd like to go back to just being a field investigator because that's kind of where I had the most fun. But, someone needed to drive the ship for a while, so I jumped in. But I mean, when it comes to investigating stuff, we had this one in Calgary, Michael O'Reilly. And that's, basically what we're seeing over Canada are three shapes. There's orbs, they're what I call the drones, and then the black triangle. So the orbs, we had a pretty amazing video sent to us from Squamish, BC. Rob Freeman is a filmmaker. And if you go onto YouTube... I
used to work with him.
Okay, so you know Rob, yeah.
I know Rob.
You've undoubtedly you've probably seen his video, and it's really incredible. It's at the Chief, which is this rock face, just outside Squamish, British Columbia, and it's internationally known as a great rock climbing face. People will free climb the front of it, and then for amateurs, it's just like a nice easy hike. You can walk up the back. But he set up his cameras, and this has also been with the First Nations. It's a very high active area for strange happenings, and he caught this orb flying into the trees just in front of the face of the Chief where people climb, and it was in the middle of the night. It's an unbelievable video. So Rob's going to hopefully come to our convention in June as well and talk about how he caught that, etc. So that's like the orbs. Now the drones, Toronto is on Lake Ontario, and just to the east of the city are two nuclear power plants, the Pickering nuclear station, and I'm blanking on the other one now, but they're literally 5 minutes between the two stations, and it is a high activity area as well for a strange phenomenon. And we have photos of some drones, and they are large craft, as big as a minibus. And we have photos of these. We have the eyewitnesses. This one eyewitness and his wife. We check the patterns. It's nothing that the regular airplanes would be taking, the passenger planes, the airliners. So that one was closed as an unknown. That was just this past summer. Also in the drones, in Calgary, I was mentioning, Michael O'Reilly is a member now, but he had a sighting. It was about the size of a the VW buses, the hippie bus. And this thing was flying over the Bow River. Now, the Bow River is a big Canadian river that runs right through the middle of Calgary. And this was after a major flood in 2014. He was out walking his dog, and he saw this thing flying around. He took some pictures on his cell phone. A jogger stopped, and they looked at this thing, and he was just absolutely blown away. So he took it down to the next MUFON convention. Linda Moulton Howe was there. He showed the photos. He had a artist rendition. So again, if you go on YouTube and you Google Michael O'Reilly UFO sighting Calgary, you'll see his photos and you'll see his artist rendition. And what it was is when he was looking at this craft, there was almost like a vortex of energy wave going around it. And he likened it to when you, in the middle of the summer, when you're looking down the highway and you see those heat waves going up. And he said it was almost like that. And so we've had a lot of those drone sightings. Black Triangle, we had a mini flat last year in 1 week. It started in Montreal. We had 3 sightings. 2 days later, we got a photograph of one outside Burlington, which is a suburb of Toronto, which is 200-300 miles down the Lake Ontario. And then at the bottom of the lake at Fort Erie, 2 days later, another sighting of the same craft. The two fellows who saw this, they were on their back balcony. They were looking at Buffalo International Airport, and they were watching planes coming in for landing, and they saw this thing in the air. They said it looked like a huge black triangle, looked about 10 football fields in size. And this is where the story gets really strange. It was coming into the same landing pattern as the other jet, and then all of a sudden, slowly it cloaked itself. Now, it's a fantastical story, hard to believe, and we interviewed the one fellow in person. The other fellow we talked with him, but he wanted to be anonymous. He was really shaken up, and the first fellow, he wanted to find out what it was. So he was very cooperative. He spoke to us many times. We checked the airport authority, the Air Force, the police, everybody. Nobody saw anything. So that's pretty interesting. And that again is a black triangle. So those are the 3 things we're seeing the most of over Canada.
Are there any hot spots in Canada that get more sightings than normal? And a lot of people will say it probably is Toronto, Montreal, or Vancouver, the 3 most populous cities in Vancouver. But because we're so regionalized, are there areas that are just really hot spots?
Yeah, there are. Just north of Montreal in the Laurentian Mountains. There, for the last few years, there's been many sightings, and there is really a hot spot up there. Now, a lot of people are thinking it could be because of the rare minerals in the Canadian Shield. There is an old NORAD base that has been shut down, and some people say they see light coming and going from that into the sky and then disappearing into this old NORAD base. there could be something to that. Nova Scotia out east is still a hotbed. The Shag Harbor, and not in Shag Harbor, but all over the island, the province. We get many sightings from Nova Scotia. British Columbia, absolutely. Again, areas like Squamish, as I talked about, Vancouver Island, probably the most famous photograph, the Hannah McRoberts photograph from 1986, was taken on Vancouver Island, 400 miles away from the Cascade Mountains, where Kenneth Arnold took his famous photo in 1947, a week before the Roswell crash. So I kind of like to tie those two together. But again, if you go on YouTube or on Google, and if you Google Hannah McRoberts UFO photo 1986, she caught that in the corner of the photo. She was taking a picture of a mountain. They sent this into Richard Haines, who at the time I think was working at NASA, and he examined the negatives, which is the only way to do it really, and he concluded that was an actual craft, probably 30 feet in diameter, and to this day that's probably the best Canadian UFO photo. Probably second to the Place Bonaventure, the hotel in Montreal, that had a UFO hovering over it for 3 hours. Now, this one, they had police were called. There was a police sergeant at the time, Francois Lupé, and he went on TV and was interviewed, and but there's a rooftop pool. And I've been there. I was there last year, and it's the coolest pool. 20 floors up, and one guest was floating in it at night, and then all of a sudden, this huge light was hovering over the hotel. She called the lifeguard. Lifeguard called security. Security called the police, and everybody watched this thing for 3 hours. So this again, that was, and there are photos. This was in 1990, so that was a pretty good one as well.
Do you think Canada is a very open country when it comes to the field of ufology? Because from what I've noticed in doing this show and having quite a few Canadian guests, there's still the attitude out there that this is one of those taboo subjects, Stu, that we just don't talk about.
Right, yes, and I agree to a certain extent because having gone to university in the States, and I lived there for 6 years, and I travel throughout the States, on my real job all the time. Canadians are a little more subdued. We're I wouldn't say we're a little more polite. It's just that we just like to take a minute and pause. And it comes also, you can translate that over to the UFO as well, but I believe we are very open. Paul Hellyer, I'm a big fan of his. He came out, a decade ago saying, UFOs are as real as the planes that fly over your head. And he was the defense minister. He was assistant prime minister, deputy prime minister under Trudeau and things like that. So he would have been privy to a lot of information. So I believe that he's the type of person who would be open. The problem is that I don't think the Canadian military, the Canadian government really runs the UFO program. I believe it's black projects out of the States, and so it doesn't matter what we say up here or what we know, what we don't know. I really don't think that our military or our politicians have any say on anything.
And that leads me to the next question, because if Canadians are reserved around these topics, and let's face it, you are probably, with MUFON Canada, only hearing maybe a tenth, if that, of all the reports that are coming into the country, or people who are having their own sightings. Do you think that we are reserved because of who our neighbor is to the south, or is it just that we're so relaxed and chill up here that it's just like, yeah, that was kind of cool, now let's, go grab a donut or coffee and watch the hockey game? Like, what would be your perception of everything?
That's a good question. It's just that some cultures are different and some people are different. So I really wouldn't try and read too much into it. Everything is proportional. The number of sightings per year is proportional to our population. 33, 34 million people. It's the same as the population of California. California has the most sightings in the United States. And so it's just that we've got such a huge country and just not a lot of people. So that's probably why you don't hear about it a lot. But no, we're more English, I think still. We're more conservative. And so that's probably also part of it as well.
We have had our own Roswell, and that's going back to 1967 with the Shag Harbor incident on October 3rd, which is so coincidental because it was just 3 months after Paul Hellyer had actually dedicated on Canada Day, or just around, a UFO landing pad in Alberta, and on July 3rd. And I'm just curious, why do you think that Shag Harbor has never really gotten the publicity up here as compared to Roswell down in the United States?
Well, again, another good question. I believe this one was, like Roswell, the clamps were put on this sighting as well. It's an absolutely amazing story, and when you start peeling back the onion and all the layers, it really gets crazy. So, I mean, in a nutshell, October 3rd, 1967, fishermen at Shag Harbor thought they saw a passenger liner, a passenger plane on fire, crash land into the harbor, into the bay. And so all these fishermen jump in their boat, and they are going to go out there and save these people. On one of the boats was an RCMP officer. And they're getting out there, and they see that there's whatever it is still floating, but it has a dome on it, and this dome is lit. As it gets closer, the light sort of fades out, and this thing sinks. They get to the spot where it crashed, and all they see is this bright fluorescent green foam in the water. They even reached down and touched this stuff and never seen anything like it. And, they'd been fishermen there for decades, all their lives, and never seen anything like this. So back on shore, the RCMP officer, he files a report, as a UFO. This goes into the archives in Ottawa, the nation capital. And years later, when Chris Stiles is one of the investigators who's writing the book, and Don Ledger, the other fellow who wrote the book with him. And, apparently they get this information, they look up in the archive, find all this information, they go back again, and it's all been removed. The story, they also wrote a second book called Impact to Contact. So the first book was called Dark Object. In the second book, where Chris Stiles wrote it with another author, Graham Sims, also an investigator, this included some deathbed confessions of some Navy divers. See, what happened was after the crash, all of a sudden, a warship shows up in the bay, anchors, and they send divers down to see if there's anything under there. And as the story goes, from this deathbed confession, the divers said they went down there. There wasn't just one craft, there was a second craft that was assisting the repair of the first. And there were beings down there that made it very clear that they were not welcome to leave and not come back. So, that throws everything into a whole different light. And to add to that, it's 1967. It's the height of the Cold War. There was a secret naval base in Shelburne, just a few kilometers up the road. And this naval base, one of their jobs was to lay not mines, but sensors on the ocean floor in the different bays, because there were Soviet subs in the area. And they were trying to track Soviet subs and listen for them. So you had the U.S. Navy there, the Canadian Navy. They were laying sensors. You had the Soviet Union submarines there, in the height of the Cold War. So, and then something weird crashes into the bay. Was it some sort of secret naval or Army or Air Force craft? We don't know for sure. But the story is certainly really, really interesting. But why did it not get any as much traction as Roswell? Well, I think the Roswell story really exploded. With Stanton Friedman, the investigator and author, who really dug up the witnesses and made it public.
Well, with Stanton living in Nova Scotia, New Brunswick now, we'd think that maybe he would jump on that story a little bit more, but do you think that Canada or Canadian experiencers or UFO witnesses deserve to hear more about that story? Because it is our connection to the field of ufology in a really great way, and it's really one of those stories that 99% of the Canadians out there have never heard of.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree, and we're certainly doing our best to get the word out. MUFON's trying to help the folks there at Shag Harbor. There was a festival just a few weeks ago. I went there and I spoke and gave my little PowerPoint presentation of all the videos and photos of Canadian UFOs, and a lot of the witnesses are still alive, and they got up there on a panel and they told their stories. It was just absolutely fascinating. There was a Pan Am pilot who was flying from New York to Dublin, and he also saw the UFO. And he came back, heard the story, and searched out the other witnesses and said, "This is what I saw," and it was exactly the same thing that they'd seen. So it was a great weekend. There's a bus tour where they take you to the spot, and the witnesses, which are well into their 60s and 70s and 80s now, will tell you their story. So it's we're still trying to get the word out and get that one get the information out, but it's tough sometimes. You're right. Sometimes people in Canada, just sort of ho hum. Oh, okay, another UFO thing. That's good.
Do you believe though, Stu, that, or you may be a little surprised with the advent of reality television and these topics being so highly rated on television ratings, that nobody has really taken the time to go and do a quality documentary on this Shag Harbor incident that really could put the field of ufology back on Canada's map?
Mm-hmm. Well, it was on, they did a couple of segments on Unexplained Mysteries, was a U.S. show, and there's been a couple of other ones, but nothing recently, and the one that I think really has not been publicized enough, well, certainly Shag Harbor, but there were some sightings. There was a 2-year flap just south of Winnipeg and Carmen, and I just finished reading the book
Charlie Red
Star by Grant Cameron, and he was a young 18-year-old guy, and he and his buddies would jump in the car and they'd drive 45 minutes south of Winnipeg, and they'd see this red, glowing, pulsating orb. It would come up across the U.S. border, because we were down there close to North Dakota and it would come up and it'd circle around Carmen and then go back south again across the U.S. border. And, you know, for 2 summers, people saw that. They also saw different craft, like a huge spinning Ferris wheel type craft. Some of these crafts would land, but it was almost like clockwork, and they'd find different spots to view it, and then we'd get in the cars and they'd chase these things. They have a couple of really good photos. They have about 12 seconds of film. One of the TV stations actually caught it on film. And so what Grant Cameron did is he made the correlation of what was happening in Carmen, Manitoba, with what was happening at the ICBM missile silos across the U.S. border. And there are dozens of reports. Robert Hastings is a famous researcher talking about nukes and UFOs and how these UFOs would buzz these ICBM. There was one instance where the missiles all came online and there's nothing they could do about it, and they started a countdown for liftoff, and all of a sudden then everything went dead.
Stu, I'm gonna get you to hold. I'm going to get you to hold on there because we are literally going to go to break here momentarily on Spaced Out Radio. We're going to talk more about UFO sightings in Canada with MUFON director Stu Bundy tonight. It's a pleasure to have Stu on. We got him on for one more hour. In hour number 3, our resident scientist, Eric Markham, the preacher, is back. We'll have him talking about the UFO experience as well in hour number 3. MUFON Canada. 48 years they've been investigating sightings north of the border, and they do a good job as well. So check them out. All you got to do is Google them. MUFON Canada, take you right there. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. We'll be back right after this.
365 days a year, we're in the field, investigating UFO sightings, talking to alien abductees, and visiting secret military locations like Area 51. We're UFO Seekers, official partner of Spaced Out Radio. Follow our daily search for the truth at ufoseekers.com or like us on social media. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
From coast to coast to coast, Blacklight Uncharted is taking on the paranormal across Canada. From ghostly hauntings to the UFOs flying above in conjunction with MUFON Canada, we're closely investigating what's going on in the northern skies and checking out the apparitions that walk among us. Check out our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com. We want to know your thoughts, we want to hear your experiences, and we want you to share your stories. The answers are out there, and we intend to find them.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
It's paranormal news at its finest. Welcome to The Encounter. At spacedoutradio.com, The Encounter online is SOR's trusted news source for everything weird and strange going on around the world. This is news editor Eric Markham. Our team of journalists are scouring the planet for those strange stories that rarely make the mainstream. No fear-mongering or fake news here. Head over to spacedoutradio.com and encounter The Encounter.
Want to learn more about aliens, cover-ups, conspiracies, cryptids, and the paranormal? All you have to do is tune in S4 as we take over the Spaced Out Radio night, starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, each and every Saturday night, right after Spaced Out Saturdays. Hi there, this is Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. Join me, Corey Ruiz, and friends as we discuss the hot topics of the night. It's fun, entertaining, and as dark as the night. Find us at spacedoutradio.com.
Hey, this is Canadian paranormal investigator Mike Moore. The third Wednesday of every month, I'll be teaming up with Dave Scott to bring you Ghosts of the Great White North. Each month, we will bring on guests from across Canada to discuss their ghostly encounters. Canada is a paranormal hotbed with stories you've never heard, so we're going to bring them to you. So get comfy on your Chesterfield, grab a donut, and join us, eh?
Are you an experiencer? Have you had run-ins with strange creatures you can't explain? ETs, Dogman, Bigfoot, werewolves? They're enough to scare the daylights out of anyone. Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski from your Cop. And on the last Monday of every month, you can listen to me and the host, Dave Scott, talk about the weird and the strange being reported on Spaced Out Radio. I'm going to bring my investigations and sources, you bring your experiences, and we'll figure out the rest together. Strange Days on Spaced Out Radio. Come tune us in at spacedoutradio.com.
Want a place to share your experiences without feeling judged? We have the place for you. If you've experienced sightings or contact with ETs, ghosts, cryptids, or UFOs, and you'd like someone to confidentially look into the matter, just fill out an SOR Sightlines report. Our goal is to help you get the answers you need to the experiences you've had with our professional team of researchers. Your information stays 100% confidential. The SOR Sightlines report. Fill out your experience today only at spacedoutradio.com.
Psychic Sundays, spiritual communication, ET contact, Sasquatch in your backyard. We will have it all on Cosmic Passport with me, Elizabeth Anglin. Each Sunday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, at spacedoutradio.com, I will take you on a journey of enlightenment. The goal is learning from the soul on out. We'd love it if you joined our experience, Cosmic Passport, heard Sundays at spacedoutradio.com.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
From British Columbia to Northern California, Pacific North Weird has Cascadia covered. Check out our feature videos at spacedoutradio.com, where I, Vincent Zunza, and my super sleuth partner Alexandra Sullivan track down the weird and strange stories from around the Pacific Northwest, from Bigfoot to Mel's Hole and everything in between. This is what makes life exciting. So why report the normal when we can report the Pacific North Weird right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
Welcome to Spaced Out Saturdays with me, Dave Cruz from Beyond the Strange. Our weekly feature on spacedoutradio.com will take you around the world discussing everything from the paranormal to the latest conspiracies from the top guests in their fields. We won't leave any story uncovered. Spaced Out Saturdays at spacedoutradio.com starting 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. And hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag Spaced Out Radio. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Welcome back to the second hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Great to have you with us. Tomorrow night on the program, David Weatherly will be back as we talk all things cryptid tomorrow night starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com. We want to welcome in everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. We are also live on KTLK, The Fringe FM, Renegade Talk Radio out of Las Vegas. And if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Epicalix. Epicalix is your password. Make sure you use it wisely, Space Travelers, as Bill sets a password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Now, if you want to follow us on social media, you can do so on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio if you want to connect live with me during the show as well. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can also join us for live chat on Facebook in the SOR Space Travelers group. We're also on Instagram, Dave Scott SOR. You can listen to us on iHeartRadio in the United States, TalkStream Live, tune us in on TuneIn, download and subscribe to our shows on iTunes. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including joining the SOR Space Travelers Club for $5 a month. You can watch videos from UFO seekers and Contact TV, rock out to some Bumblefoot, shop at our Spaced Out Radio store, or read The Encounter online. Everything at spacedoutradio.com. Tonight we have the head of MUFON Canada with us. Stu Bundy is a part of the group, investigating UFO sightings from coast to coast to coast here in Canada. Stu, welcome back.
Thanks, Dave.
Not a problem. Right before the break, we were talking about some of the experiences that have gone on across the country that maybe get little to no press coverage. Do you think the Canadian media has really a fickle stance when it comes to ufology? And I'll tell you why I think that's true. I remember I had a UFO sighting when I lived in Mission, British Columbia. Off my patio, there were 4 of us who saw it. I called up my old radio station in Vancouver. My buddy John answered the phone. And the first thing he does is he says, "Dave, what are you smoking?" And I'm like, "Dude, I don't, you know that. I don't do that crap." And he goes, "Okay, how much have you had to drink?" Long story short, I thought I would have a little bit of credibility there, considering I worked with the guy and worked there for 7 years. However, the media really doesn't seem to want to touch this topic in Canada. What is your thoughts on that?
No, I totally agree. I believe it sort of mimics the U.S. situation as well. Having worked at the CTV station, Canadian Television Network in Toronto, after coming back to my buddies that still work there and said, "Listen, I've got this event that happened, this sighting happened. We'd like to publicize it. Would you put it on the news?" And they all said, "No, that's nothing. We don't do that sort of thing." Now, whether it's, I just don't think it is a decision made at that level. I think it's a decision made higher. And from experience, they would have, publicized certain things, and then they would have been told from superiors, don't do that again. That's my feeling on it. Because it's almost like pulling teeth to try and get any kind of information out there on the traditional news outlets in Canada. So, but I mean, every once in a while there will be a story, whether it's the CBC or what have you. But they're far and few between. So we have a lot of work to do.
And you see, when I remember working in a newsroom, and we have a lot of conspiracy theorists who listen to this show, and a lot of them believe, even up here in Canada, that the media is infiltrated with government officials saying what we can and cannot run, especially when it comes to topics like UFOs or ET contact, so on and so forth. I don't really buy that. I've never seen it when I worked in newsrooms, but on the flip side, I do believe it is the naivety of the news editors who will throw it away and say, well, that's just not a story that we need to run. It really is of no interest or consequence to what is going on, because there is the whole if it bleeds, it leads type topics when it comes to news. So do you think it's more the editors being fickle about it, or do you believe it's more that there is some sort of government control?
Yeah, I don't know whether it's a government control, but there is some sort of control going on. We had a chance, last June to spend some time with Stephen Greer. He was our keynote speaker at the convention last year, and he is very certain that a lot of the major American news outlets have been infiltrated either by CIA operatives or the reporters have been paid off, and there were moles in many of the organizations, and apparently he had proof. So if that is going on, well, it's quite a serious allegation and quite a serious situation. And so with those sort of assets in place, whether it's CIA or what have you, it'd be easy to control information, or easier anyway. Up here in Canada, I'm not so sure about that, but certainly, Stephen Greer's allegations were, pretty impressive. The people he had that were, coming public and making these statements, and he's quite a polarizing figure. Whether you love him or you hate him, he's always stuck to his guns, and he is moving forward with his agenda, which is to, get free energy out to the public, to force disclosure, and to try and, basically save the planet. So, again, whether you hate him or you love him, he's on our team. So we're all on the same team. So you make your own decision whether you think his message is right or wrong. But that leads to the question, or just the fact that this genre is so splintered. There's so many people going in a bunch of different directions, and not all of them see eye to eye. So when you talk about the new Tom DeLonge company, where he's asking for money, to build spaceships and research and things like that, and a lot of people online are very upset and saying, well, this is just a sham, and he's doing this, and look at the way the company's set up, etc. And MUFON, we're just sitting back, we're just going to watch everything, not really comment. It would be great if there was disclosure. It would be great if this is the vehicle that enforced it. And I know that Tom DeLonge and Stephen Greer don't see eye to eye anymore. But we see it as everyone's on the same team. So it'd be nice if everyone just got along.
Well, I do want to ask you about the Tom DeLonge situation here, probably in the next half an hour if we get to it. But when it comes to the Canadian way of doing things, yes, we're more passive, but do you think that Canada has a legitimate role in covering up UFOs?
I think the Canadian government over the years certainly has. Wilbur Smith was a high-ranking official in the transport department. He was investigating UFOs in the 50s and 60s, and then was told not to. We've got the Shag Harbor, where the RCMP reports have gone missing out of the archives, things like that. So certainly, Canada has had its share of cover-ups, I believe, as well. But I don't think not nearly as much as in the States.
The reason why I ask is because we are so tied to the United States up here. And whether it's economically, whether it's militarily, whether it's everything we seem to do is from our big brother down south. And I'm wondering, because there is such secrecy around the secret space program, Black Op projects that are flying out of Area 51 and other places, we know that the United States has frequently tested programs up in Cold Lake, Alberta, where they have an area that is, I believe, 4 or 5 times larger than the Nellis Air Force Range. And I'm wondering if we are looking at something where we are so intertwined with the United States that if the United States said, look, we don't want you guys talking UFOs or declassifying your facts, even though Canada has a little bit. But do you think that that tie to our neighbors to the south really keeps us, or Canadians, in the dark when it comes to the field of ufology?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. We have some really great Canadians in the International Space Program. Chris Hadfield, is famous for singing that David Bowie song, and Mark Garneau was the first Canadian in space. He flew 3 space shuttle missions. But that sort of thing has no tie to military. In the conventional military, yes, absolutely, we do. I was in the Reserve Army in Canada, so we would do joint exercises with U.S. counterparts, and so all that stuff goes on, absolutely. But the real black stuff, our government is. I believe our government in the dark as much as the regular U.S. government as well. There's that famous statement from Clinton when asked by one of the White House press people. He was asked a question, and he said, "There's a government within the government, and I don't run that one." I think he was asked a question about Area 51. So when you have the President of the United States saying something like that, well, then there's a huge disconnect for sure.
Do you feel Canada plays a role in these secrets? Do you feel that it's our government's mandate? Because, let's face it, we're not a heavily militarized country. I believe military spending is, last time I checked, was bottom 10 or bottom 15 of spending that goes on in Canada, number 1 being healthcare, number 2 being education. And I'm just curious if you feel that it's of any of importance to those in Ottawa about these subjects.
No, I really don't think they feel it's important. I think if the Canadian government is guilty of anything, it's being complicit to their U.S. counterparts. We could not win a war on our own. We have to rely on the United States. Our military is a fraction of the size. So that's not what we are concentrating on. Like you said, it's healthcare, education, and we try to do our part with NATO, peacekeeping around the world. We don't have a very large army, but they're very well trained and very well respected. But I don't think we play a big role in any kind of cover-up. We are just, I believe, complicit with going along with what we're told to do. If we're told not to say anything, we don't say anything. I certainly don't think I don't think we're running the ship.
Have you ever discussed this topic with any current Canadian politicians?
No. Spent a few hours with Paul Hellyer last year, he's again from his experiences, he certainly believes there's a cover-up, whether it's Canadian American. But now, Paul Hellyer, what his push is to try and he's going for banking reform, and he believes if you can change the banking system and stop the corruption, then it'll trickle down into all facets. So he's a pretty interesting fellow. But we have not we've not gone after any current politicians of power.
Do you think there are Canadian politicians in the know on what's going on? Because people like Victor Vigiani, who is in your area, have been very, aggressive, so to speak, in order to try and bring these topics to the table on a Canadian governmental level.
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, Victor is an amazing investigator. He came up with some NORAD papers stating that it showed a couple of encounters where fighter jets were scrambled and went after some UFOs, and he made them public. And the American government said, if you make them public, we're gonna go up there and arrest you. And Victor basically said, I dare the U.S. government to come across the border and arrest me. So yeah, you're absolutely right. He's very aggressive with that sort of stuff, and he's a real champion of the cause. So we'll see what happens in the future. But yeah, absolutely, Victor Vigiani is a great researcher, and he's come up with some really good stuff.
So where do you see ufology going here in Canada if everybody is so reserved or not really wanting to talk about the topic?
Well, I think we're trying to reach a critical mass. I think people will, once they feel that it's okay to talk about it, they will talk about it. We're getting requests for meetings all the time. Where can people meet? We like to have these little MUFON coffee clubs where we'll go to the coffee shop and just talk about local sightings, maybe show some PowerPoints and things like that. We in Canada, we try and direct people to our Facebook page, MUFON Canada Facebook page, and there you can see where the meetups are and the group meetings. So it's really still very grassroots at this point. But again, MUFON Canada, we've quadrupled our membership in the last 5 years. So it really seems like people are starting to really sort of come out of their shell, and they want to know, and they're getting a little more involved.
When people get involved, that means they actually have to look up in the skies to see what is going on. Do you feel that there are more people starting to look up at the sky rather than staring at their phone and missing what is going on above them?
Well, the people who look up in the sky at night are usually the smokers. And thank God for the smokers of the world. Because a lot of our sighting reports start like this. I was outside having my last butt of the night, my last cigarette of the night. And I was looking up and I saw this weird light. That's how a lot of the sighting reports start. So, yeah, people are looking down at the phones, but the smokers of the world are still out there at night looking up at the stars. I think people are, it's not that they're not seeing things, it's now with social media, they're reaching out more. Things can get viral pretty quick, and with just, a few taps on the phone, they can send a photo or a video. So I think that certainly has helped for sure.
How many reports does MUFON Canada get on an annual basis?
Between 500 and 600 sighting reports. And, they peak during the summer, and then they tail off as soon as it starts getting cold. It's just, you can imagine it's, people are inside when it's cold, and people are outside camping and sitting out back when it's nice and warm, and all that sort of stuff. And, again, between 3 and 5% of those will be closed as unknowns. The rest will be, the majority of them will be IFOs. We'll figure out if it's conventional aircraft, a phenomenon, a natural phenomenon, like a star, a planet, shooting star, that sort of thing. Man-made would also be the International Space Station. But yeah, between 500 and 600. Now, that's not the only sightings. A lot of sightings, will just be put on Google, on YouTube. There's a fellow out of Winnipeg, Chris Rutowski. He runs UFO research, and he does a UFO Canadian survey every year. And so he's got a lot more sighting reports. People will send it directly to him. So that's a really good source of sighting reports as well. But the ones that just sent to MUFON, between 500 and 600 a year.
This leads to a question.
MUFON Canada.
Right. This leads to a question from Adam in the SOR Space Travelers room, and he is asking, Stu, does the Canadian MUFON network work with the U.S. MUFON network or any other countries as well?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. As I mentioned earlier, we are a chapter. We're like another state. So, when, for example, we need resources, there's a new lab that's set up in Missouri. So if we have a suspected implant, or if we have soil samples we need analyzed, we can ship them to this lab in Missouri. And again, if we are stumped when it comes to a photo or some video, we have access to Mark Bentonio and his team down the States as well. So yeah, we're definitely affiliated. We're work closely with them. Our Quebec director, Marc St. Germain, has also been instrumental in setting up MUFON France. He's been over to Paris a few times, and he's training field investigators over in France, and now they're up and running. So we're directly connected with MUFON Quebec is directly connected with MUFON France as well. So yeah, it's one big happy family, and it's kind of cool the way that things have grown over the years to a real, true international organization.
Lois is asking if you have investigated or heard about the silver sphere sightings that have been happening in British Columbia.
Yeah, we've had some reports, and we've done what we can. It is an open case, and we're still looking for more evidence to analyze. Membership goes up and down. Field investigators come and go. Right now, we're looking for more field investigators in British Columbia. There's a fellow, Charles Lamoureux. He's a filmmaker, documentary guy from Vancouver, and he's just joined. And it'll be great because he's got some amazing equipment, night vision cameras, infrared cameras, and he's documented some really cool UFOs. One is called the Wobbler. It wobbles. So if you can go on YouTube and search for the Wobbler in Vancouver, you'll see an amazing piece of video that we cannot explain. But yeah, so that's an open case still.
So what are people seeing in British Columbia?
Well, they are seeing the main three things that I mentioned earlier are the orbs, drones, and black triangles.
Yes, I've seen two of them myself. The black triangles are kind of cool.
Two
black
really?
Triangles. Yeah. They were in 2013. 2013,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's very close to our flap in Ontario, and there is one of the great rumors is the TR-3B program, which is the U.S. Air Force anti-gravitic craft, where they've reversed engineered alien technology, and they've got these huge triangular craft that their propulsion is anti-gravity, and so that's something that many people believe is in fact true. And someday, they'll come out and say, yeah, we've had these, and they've been experimental. It's sort of like in the 80s, in the early 90s, we got a ton of sighting reports in California and Washington and Vancouver of black triangles and weird shaped craft, and most of those turned out to be the stealth fighter and then the stealth bomber. Going up and down the coast on training missions, etc. Totally secret. Nobody knew about them, but now, decades later, we do know about them. So we think that the same thing's going to happen with these black triangles, that eventually, we'll learn that it is an actual craft, and it's been around for a while.
Eric has a question. He is asking, how much influence does Robert Bigelow and Bigelow Aerospace have on MUFON Canada?
Well, none on MUFON Canada. There was a deal struck with MUFON International a few years ago where he would donate funds to keep us alive, and we would share our sighting reports with him. And our sighting reports are public anyway, but he would get first crack at it. But again, then they would be released to the public. So if you went to a website called UFO Stalker, is put up on that. That's sort of like the public website for it. But Bigelow does not have any influence on MUFON. It was purely a sort of a share program at one point, but that's long ended.
You mentioned there was a bunch of new sightings in Ontario recently involving drones.
Right, yeah. It was, the first one was a regional carrier called Porter Airlines. They go to Chicago, Boston. They use the turboprop, the Dash 8 aircraft. It was coming in to Toronto from Ottawa, and had to do evasive maneuvers to avoid an inner tube-shaped object, a huge inner tube-shaped object at 6,000 feet. Two of the attendants had to go to hospital, and the pilots would not make any comment. MUFON found out through the transport ministry that the pilots would not do a UFO report, that they called it a drone. And then a month later, there was a drone sighting at 6,700 feet at the Ottawa airport, seen by both an Air Canada jet and a WestJet aircraft. It was so dramatic that they scrambled a couple of CF-18s from a Canadian military base. Could not find the object, but both pilots submitted reports saying they'd seen a drone at roughly 6,800 feet. Now, regular drones don't go up that high, and they certainly aren't as big as a car. Not the ones that we know about. If it's a military one, well, then if it's Canadian military, well, why would they have a drone buzzing the Ottawa airport? If it's a military drone, again, why would they be buzzing a public airport? And what happened a week later, Mark Garneau, who is the transport minister, came out and put new restrictions in Canada. People who have their own drones, private drones, whether it's a quadcopter or what have you, they are not allowed to fly them at night now in Canada, and during the day The height restriction is 90 meters. But what we really took away from this is pilots are now coming forward. They're now going public again, because for decades they would not say anything. You know, the old story is, do you want to file a UFO sighting? Nope. I don't want to be put on leave or be chastised or have people look at me sideways. So now what they're able to do is they're able to put in drone reports, and they're able to talk to people about it and say it's a drone, and people can infer whatever they want into that. So that's sort of like the new buzzword for pilots is drone.
Andrew out of Vancouver is asking a question here, and he's saying, has MUFON Canada ever been investigated by the Canadian Armed Forces or CSIS? And if so, how?
Not that I know of. I don't believe we've ever been investigated. I don't know. I don't know why we would be investigated. We're a non-profit volunteer organization. Maybe the listener was asking, thinking, have we ever had our files confiscated or something like that? But no, not since I've been around since 2000. So, and then talking with some of the old timers, we've never had any problems with the government or the military at MUFON Canada anyway.
Let's get to a question from BTO, who is asking, Stu, what is your most compelling, legitimate investigation to date and the evidence that came along with it?
Well, that's easy. There was a case in northern Ontario, north of Sudbury. If you ever heard of Sudbury, so where most of the nickel from all over the world comes from. There was an amazing sighting report, and I'll give you the quick story about it. It's called the Barbell UFO sighting report. So if you go on YouTube, you Google MUFON Barbell report, and it's a craft that was in the shape, they call it a barbell, but I played football. I grew up in gyms. It's actually a dumbbell. Those the weights that you have in each hand. The barbell is that long bar where you do the curls and all the other exercises, but the bench press. So it's called the Barbell UFO sighting. The summer of 2014, 3 American hunters were coming up a logging road. They were bear hunting. They had a license. They had tags. The lead hunter, witness number 1, was from Indiana, or is from Indiana. He is a defense contractor for the military. The man he's a genius. He's brilliant. He's working on all sorts of crazy advanced stuff. And he and his 2 buddies saw this metallic craft coming up the valley. They got their camera out. They got their phone ready. They were going to take pictures of this thing. It came to within about 150 feet of them. Over top, they could feel, sort of electrical field. They also had these Motorola field radios. Now, the field radios fried. I mean, all the circuits inside fried. The video camera and the phone kept turning off. Now, modern phones and video cameras have an override. When there's too much electricity, it'll automatically turn itself off, and that way it won't fry the components. So they kept turning off. Every time they turn it on, they would turn themselves off. Hunter number 2 was looking through the scope and wanted to shoot the object, and hunter number 1 stopped him. They watched it for about 5-7 minutes as it went up the valley, and then a second object came up the valley as well. Only one of the witnesses will come forward, and he only would talk to us If he was blackened out, his whole body was, sort of blacked out, and we changed his voice. Only 2 people in MUFON know his identity, because he doesn't want to lose his top secret classification and certainly any of his defense contracts. So I don't even know what the guy's name is. I just know he's from Indiana, and he's planning to go public someday. But it's sort of weird. And Grant Cameron made this statement years ago. You will see a UFO only if the UFO wants you to see it. And some people get, in my opinion, I strongly believe some people will be picked to see something because of who they are, what their experience is, what their knowledge is, what they're working on. And this guy was working on lasers and advanced technologies. He knew exactly how much energy it took to for this barbell to fly. He said it was this thing is not aerodynamic, and the way it floated in the sky would have taken like a small nuclear plant to power this thing. So that is what's flying over top of Canada, or certainly was at one point, and it's just really remarkable. Now, do we have photos? No. Do we have video? No. What we do have is we have the audio from that video camera. That when it did come back on, there was audio, and we have some artist rendition. But to me, that's I think kind of the scariest thing that we've investigated.
Let's get to Craig's question here. He's based out of Alberta and is wondering where in Alberta would be the best place for him to see a UFO.
Well, Edmonton, there's been a lot of sightings. Calgary, is there a particular hot spot? No, it's basically all over the place. We have had some certainly up near Jasper. Now, if you're coming out of Edmonton and you're going up to Jasper, we had a really good sighting. It was very similar to Travis Walton. There were 5 guys. They weren't loggers, but they were coming back from a construction site in Jasper, coming back to Edmonton. They were followed by what they thought was a helicopter. But when they stopped the truck and they got out, there's only 3 guys. This thing hovered around them. There was no noise. It looked like it had a spotlight on it, 4 lights on each corner. And they got spooked, jumped in the truck and drove off. This thing kept following it and then eventually disappeared. So that was on the highway. I think it was Highway 16 between Edmonton and Jasper. Up in the mountains, Canmore, Banff, had many sightings up there, especially when you're on First Nation land. We believe the Indigenous folks are very sensitive to the earth, to the spirit, and are they're much more susceptible to communicating with ETs.
Sandra is asking, other than Carmen, Manitoba, was there any other towns in that province that were hot spots in the 70s?
Oh yeah, there was. In the 60s, there was an amazing case in Manitoba, and it's Stefan Michaluk, and this guy was a weekend prospector, and he was always out looking for minerals and things like that. This was a couple of years before Shag Harbor. If you go on Google, and if you punch in, Stefan Michaluk, here's a guy that saw these 2 craft hovering. And he was out in one of the national parks, looking for minerals. Wanted to hit it big with silver, was his plan. And in one of these craft, it was a typical saucer-shaped craft, landed. The other one sort of hovered. He went up there and took a look at it, He saw there was like a door open. He looked inside. There was instruments in there, and then there was this grate along the side, and sort of like an exhaust area. And as he walked around it, all of a sudden, this hot exhaust shoots out of it, and this thing starts flying up. Anyway, his shirt caught on fire. He had burns on his chest. There's a photo of him lying in the hospital bed. There's a photo of his undershirt that was all burned away. For months, he suffered what would be classically known as radiation poisoning, vomiting, diarrhea, lost weight. He was dizzy. He would be passing out, and he had these burns on his chest. In fact, they checked the national park radiation levels and had to be closed for 2 months because in that area, the radiation level was so high. So there are some places certainly in Winnipeg over the years, I mean in Manitoba over the years, but no place where you could say, it's a hot spot.
Craig is asking, with MUFON Canada, what do you do with the reports and evidence once they're submitted?
Well, the reports and evidence, the evidence would be the videos and the photos. It all gets added to our database. So if you can imagine, from 1969, we've been collecting, all of this information. And so we do reports, annual reports every year, and you can connect a lot of dots that way. Evidence, as in soil samples, clothing samples, saliva, blood, things like that. Supposed implants. I say supposed because you never know for sure, but we're pretty sure that implants are real. There's even a lot of very smart people who claim that one implant program is run by the U.S. government. Imagine you put a chip in your dog's ear. Why not put chips in humans and track them? But the evidence goes to MUFON HQ. And I'm not sure if you've ever seen a show called Hangar 1. Well, there really is a Hangar 1. It was actually designated Hangar 3, but for the TV show they changed it to 1 just to make it sound sexy. And that's where all the evidence is. Just stacks and stacks of files, soil samples, things like that are, they're all sealed up properly. But there is one place. People call it Hangar 1.
BTO is asking here, Stu, have you ever witnessed or heard of any reports to MUFON Canada about men and women, men in black or women in black coming up during investigations?
Yes. There was one outside of Hamilton, Ontario. This is a really strange case. There's a fellow who was having sightings in his backyard, and then he was actually seeing entities. He was divorced. He had his son half the time, and he was worried about his son. And one time he saw this being come through the wall of his bedroom, and he literally thought he was going crazy. He was really having a tough time. He reached out to us initially, and then just went radio silent. One of his friends turned out to be a Quebec MUFON field investigator, and I was getting some information through him. But as the story progressed, he had these sightings, and then the next thing you know, he's at work at one of the steel mills, and one of his coworkers and his boss were outside having a smoke, and they noticed somebody going through somebody's car in the parking lot. So they go over there, and it's this fellow who's having the UFO sightings, and it's his car. And he's inside at work, and there's two guys dressed in black. It was like prototypical black sunglasses, driving a brand new GM, black General Motors car, and they said, "Hey, what are you doing?" Nothing. It was a government business, and it's none of your business. And they jump in their Impala. It was an Impala, and they take off. Well, they went inside and got Buddy and said, "Hey, these are two guys all dressed in black suits were rifling through your car." So they all went back out there again. He checked his car. It was fine, except all the presets were all out of whack. You can set all the radio stations on your car. Those are all wiped clear. A bunch of other things it was almost like it was electronically wiped. So they were going through his car for whatever reason. He'll never know. And then a few weeks later, he's looking out his front window and he sees like the same kind of car roll into his neighbor's driveway across the street. Two guys get out of the car, dressed in black, knock on the door of his neighbor. There's a conversation. Neighbor gets his coat, leaves with these guys. They put him in the back seat and he goes. An hour later, they come back. The neighbor jumps out of the car and goes inside. The men in black leave. He runs across the street, bangs on the door. The neighbor opens the door and says, "I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to ever talk to you. Leave my house right now." And so it was just an absolutely strange occurrence. And then this fellow, consequently had more sightings. One time he woke up on his couch, and in his kitchen there are two entities, and he had just washed the dishes earlier, and they were holding dishes in their hands, kind of looking at like, what are these things for? And he tried to get up and scream at them, and they dropped the dishes, and that's all he remembers. And then he woke back up on the couch, and there were broken dishes in the kitchen. I mean, could he be hallucinating? Could he have done it all himself? Yeah, sure he could have. Do we have any proof, any evidence? No. We just got his testimony and the reports from his co-workers at his work that guys in black suits were going through his car.
We only got about 5 minutes left with you here, 4 actually, Stu, and I just wanted to say thank you for taking the time to come in tonight. But I did want to get your thoughts as a person who's been investigating for about 17 years now on the Tom DeLonge press conference of a couple weeks ago. There's a lot of heat coming from the field of ufology regarding this, yet there are a lot of people praising his efforts, even though the To the Stars Academy on their website has nothing to do with disclosure or UFOs of any sort. What was your opinion on it?
Well, the one thing I was disappointed in was, very blatantly asking for money. But I guess in the new normal is you need money. So I get it. I'm really just standing back, and I'm going to try and take it all in and see where everything fits. I'm going to see what happens when the dust settles. A lot of people have come out absolutely praising it. A lot of other people have come out really opposed to it and very negative. So I'm just going to see how everything goes, and we've instructed MUFON just to try and keep personal opinions to yourself and just see what happens. Because in the big picture, you get up to 30,000 feet and you're looking down at this. The big picture is we're all on the same team. The Tom DeLonges, Stephen Bassett's, the Stephen Greers of the world. We're all working towards the same thing. And I think we just need to keep thinking that way. Am I going to donate money? I don't think so. But it's up to the individual if they want to donate money to Tom DeLonge. I'm still a little confused on a couple of things, but I think the overall message is out there. If you support what he's doing, great. we'll go from there. But it definitely looks like it's a part of it is raising money, and part of it is commercial, and so we'll see how it goes. But I'm just going to keep my cards close to my chest right now, if that's okay.
I don't mind at all. And you know what? I'm one of the ones who've been public about it. I was disappointed with it because it sounded more like a telethon than any type of disclosure that we were all hoping for, and for some people even feeling that they were led up to believe. I will ask you this, though. Do you think for the time being, on the short term, it did any benefit to help the field of ufology?
I don't know, because it seems like it has splintered the field even more, really drawing lines between the pros and cons, those for and those against. So, but on the other side, though, now people are talking about it. It's again, P.T. Barnum said there is no bad press. So if
that is true.
Well then it's all good.
Absolutely.
So, I'm a half glass full guy. So to answer your question, I don't think any major harm was done. No.
My friend, we have about 30 seconds with you. Please tell people where they can get in touch with MUFON Canada.
Absolutely. Go to MUFONCanada.com. You can contact us that way. Go to our Facebook, MUFON Canada Facebook. And then if you have a sighting report, go to the mothership, MUFON.com. Just MUFON.com. That's HQ down in Los Angeles. And you just put your sighting report.
Wonderful, Stu. I want to say thank you so much for being on Spaced Out Radio tonight. I told you 2 hours was not going to be enough, but it's all you had. Well, that's all we're going to take from you tonight. But thank you so much for being on Spaced Out Radio for your first time. I really look forward to working with you on this show again. And I also want to tell people, in hour number 3 coming up, we got the preacher, Eric Markham, our resident scientist, coming up. We're going to talk about the effects of having a UFO or extraterrestrial sighting. It's going to be interesting. Stick around for one more hour of SOR.
We're getting strange on Saturday nights. Hi there, this is Dave Cruz, and each Saturday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, I will take you on a tour of the weird and obtuse on Spaced Out Saturdays. From aliens to Sasquatch and every tinfoil hat in between, we got you covered. Join us at spacedoutradio.com for Spaced Out Saturdays. See you there.
Not ready for bed on Saturday night? Right after Spaced Out Saturdays, hop on over to S4 with Corey Ruiz and me, Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. With S4, there are no limits to what we try and uncover. From government conspiracies to helping clean up the paranormal, no topic is safe on S4. We get to the heart of the matter, of the subjects you want to learn more about. So tune in on S4 starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, only on spacedoutradio.com.
Have you had an experience you can't explain? Would you like someone you can trust to look into it? We have just the place. The SOR Sightlines Report is the place for you to find answers. Whether it's Bigfoot, UFOs, Dogman, ghosts, aliens, or anything strange, the Sightlines Report will get you connected with one of our expert researchers to find out what's going on. All of your personal information is kept 100% confidential. The SOR Sightlines Report, a place for you to find the answers you need. Only at spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there. I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with UFO Cop. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Witkowski's Strange Days.
This is Eric Markham, news editor for the Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter Online. We have put together a great team of writers and journalists from all over the world to bring you top-quality paranormal stories. From alien encounters to the latest conspiracies, you won't find any of that fake news here. True stories and top-notch reporting as we look to bring these experiences to the mainstream. The Encounter online, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Do you want to know the truth? Do UFOs exist? Are aliens real? Are the governments hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO seekers, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow along with us as we journey across the United States, visiting UFO hotspots and alien hotspots, trying to document the UFO phenomenon. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
Patrolling the Pacific Northwest, we are always on the lookout for the strange and unassuming stories that real people are experiencing. Hi, I'm Vincent Zunza from Pacific North Weird. Me and Alexandra Sullivan have teamed to bring to you those odd stories that never seem to make it into the mainstream. Stories so weird that will leave you scratching your head wondering, is this real? It's as real as it gets with Pacific North Weird. You can watch our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
It's Cosmic Sundays with me, Elizabeth Anglin, in Cosmic Passport. Let me take you down a 3-hour spiritual journey where we will get into everything from ET contact to Psychic Sundays. It's a journey of listening and learning together with some of the best professionals in their fields. You can tune in to Cosmic Passport at spacedoutradio.com every Sunday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and hashtag Spaced Out Radio, and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show. Now, back to the program.
A child grew up
Welcome back to the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Great to have you with us. Tomorrow night on the program, we get all cryptid with David Weatherly as he makes his bi-monthly appearance here on Spaced Out Radio. We'll see what's happening in the world of cryptids, black-eyed kids, and so much more, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com. We want to welcome in everyone listening in at WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans, and over 160 countries around the world. Great to have you with us as well. We are also live on KTLK, The Fringe FM, Renegade Talk Radio out of Las Vegas, and if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club, Epicalix. Epicalix is your password. Make sure you use it wisely, Space Travelers, as Bill sets the password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Now, if you want to follow us on social media, you could do so on Twitter, at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. If you want to join us for some live chat, you can go into the SOR Space Travelers Club on Facebook. We're also on Instagram, Dave Scott, SOR. You can tune us in on TuneIn, download this show, and subscribe to our shows on iTunes. We're also on TalkStream Live in the United States, as well as iHeartRadio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including joining the SOR Space Travelers Club for $5 a month. Rock out to some Bumblefoot. Shop at the Spaced Out Radio store. Read The Encounter online, or watch some great videos from UFO Seekers and Contact TV. Everything at spacedoutradio.com. Hour number 3 tonight, we bring in our resident scientist, Eric Markham, the preacher we call him around here. Preacher, what's going on?
Hey, glad to be here.
Glad.
Oh, SOR.
Absolutely. We are glad to have you back after a little bit of a hiatus, but that's okay. We're happy to have our resident scientist going in and looking at the UFO field when it comes down to what is going on. And we want to thank in hours 1 and 2 from MUFON Canada, their head director, Stu Bundy, for joining us. You know, that's the first time we've had a director from MUFON, the head director from MUFON, on this show. And, you know, I was pretty impressed with his candid nature on where it went. I thought it would be a little bit more political than what he was showing.
Yeah, I was surprised by his openness, and it was rather refreshing. It didn't seem like he was that interested in towing a party line, so to speak. He was a very good guest.
Well, we're definitely going to bring him back on. I was thoroughly impressed with him as well in the way he conducted himself because, like I said, I mean, we've heard so many nightmare-type stories with senior management or directors of MUFON, especially in the United States, whether or not they were tied into government officials and so on and so forth. I didn't get that at all, and that kind of made me happy.
Yeah, I was glad to see that. It sounded to me like they have MUFON up there, but it's not as tightly controlled. I was a little concerned about when he answered the question that MUFON gets first crack at their evidence. That disturbed me in a way because I would prefer that they put it out public first. To me, that would be my priority, is because we only have his word, and don't take me wrong, I'm not trying to call him a liar or anything, but we only have his word that Bigelow Aerospace or MUFON USA or International isn't filtering his content. And that's the only concern I had. And that's just because I've hung out with all the tinfoil hat people the last couple of years that even came to me as an idea.
I didn't even have to put my tinfoil hat on for him. That's how
Right.
real it was. I don't think it would fit right now with the way my hair is right now, but that's a whole different story whatsoever. But no, we're going to have a few more chats with Stu Bundy on this show, and I'm going to be talking to him behind the scenes just to see what we could do, because he actually invited Spaced Out Radio to come and broadcast at the Alien Cosmic Expo in Toronto this coming in 2018, so we're going to effort to try and do that as well. I think that would be important for us to bring a real Canadian content to their event as well, and hopefully one day it would lead to a speaking event, but that's for another day. When it comes to UFOs and sightings, and coming from the scientific background of it all, Preacher, you know, there are a lot of people who are seeing things that they can't explain. From what you have learned since you have been in this field the last couple of years, what are the dynamics that you would look for, or you would tell someone who is having an experience that they can't explain?
Yeah, first off, you've kind of got to throw your preconceived notions of what is and what is not real out the window. I mean, my training is all, you know, if it's not in front of you, not reproducible, it doesn't happen. Well, I'm seeing that central dogma from science doesn't work here. There's just too much out there that doesn't fit within the lines. So you've got to have an open mind and be willing to accept that when you see a piece of light streak across the sky and stop, I mean, not coast down, stop immediately. Right off the bat, whatever you know about physics, you know that no human is going to be able to survive that unless there's a more advanced physics involved. And the other thing I would tell them is don't bound your evidence or your experience by what we as humans know about physics. I mean, we've just barely scratched the surface on physics. You know, Newtonian physics is good as far as it goes for a lot of things, but it's not the be-all and end-all. The fact that we see these craft do things that we would consider physically impossible is proof of that. We just don't know what we don't know at this point. So you've really got to look at it under the idea, sorry about that, throat clear, I know that drives you crazy, we don't know what's really possible out there.
No, and I understand that we don't know what's possible, but when it comes to staring up at the stars, you're somebody who has seen a UFO, something you can't explain. You look at everything with a scientific mind because, well, that's your profession, and that's what you do. When somebody, say, hasn't had that experience yet of seeing something in the sky or having little aliens running around their backyard or whatever it could be, how would you break down for the average person out there on what they should do and what they should look for to confirm or not that it is an unidentified flying object?
Okay, we're going to look at like basic behaviors. A meteor, of course, everybody's probably seen those. They flare, they disappear. Okay, but in the case of a craft, if you're lucky enough to observe a craft, look for hard right turns or, 90-degree turns. Nothing we have in our arsenal that we know of, and according to what we understand about physics, can do that. When you see a streak of light that starts at one point, zips to another point, and stops dead on a dime, and then, either disappears from there or changes course radically, that's something you got to. The main thing to do is if you have a friend, if you haven't observed this, if you have a friend that's trying to tell you what they saw, don't laugh at them. Don't try to ridicule them or make them think they're crazy. They aren't. You've got to be accepting that there are more things out. I'm not going to quote Shakespeare, but just there's a lot of stuff going on there that we don't have explanations for. And, take your friend or your family member's experience to heart. Go with them when they go stargazing or go UFO hunting or whatever. go with them. Maybe you'll have that experience, but don't just out of hand say, well, my teacher in high school said that didn't happen. That can't happen, so it didn't happen. You can't do that. You've got to be open to the fact that some people are going to say things you just don't. I mean, I've never seen a Tibetan bear. That doesn't mean they don't exist, and we can't proceed from that. You can't say, well, just because I haven't experienced it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. You have to be open to the fact that there's things out there that people are going to experience that you're just not in the loop for. And just be supportive. I mean, there's certain things you see in the night sky that you can't explain away. And that's where you have to proceed from, is you don't know everything. Nobody on earth knows everything, and you got to be open to listen to the evidence.
Trip has a question for me saying, Dave, have you ever called MUFON with your experiences? If not, why? I look at my experiences as something totally different, and a lot of people may not agree with me, but I look at them that they are for me. They are the reason why I do this show. They are the reason that I keep pushing for more and go get the guests that you guys need to hear for this show. I don't need my personal experiences validated by MUFON or any other group. That's no insult to them, whether it's MUFON, whether it's Bigfoot groups, whether it's other paranormal teams. I really don't need it validated. I know that it's for me, and what I decide to make out of it, that's what I'm going to try and get out of. So, no, I haven't. It's not that I do not like these other groups. I just look at it that it's something for me as part of the research that I do to help bring Spaced Out Radio to you guys. So that's kind of my take on it all.
And that's a good point of view. You don't need the validation. And I think that we as people at large, we want to share our experiences. And if it's something that's way out there, we want somebody else to agree with us, or, we want that validation on an instinctive level. But folks, it's not necessary. I think some of these things, like with a Bigfoot sighting, let's go off there a bit. Bigfoot's going to choose who Bigfoot's going to show up in front of. And that may be an unvalidatable certain thing. You have to trust yourself. You just can't. You've got to be willing to accept the evidence of your eyes and look at it critically. I'm not saying just call everything you see whatever it seems to be, but when you look at it, you have validated the experience by having had that experience to start with. That's all the validation you need to have. I mean, if you're the only person on earth and you see something like that, well, who would you ask anyway? So yeah.
No, and I understand.
Feel blessed that you actually had that kind of experience. You saw the UFO. Not everybody gets to see them. How long has Stanton Friedman been chasing them around, and he claims he's never seen one?
And that's a valid point, but a lot of people need that validation. I just happen to be someone who doesn't. I've taken every experience that I've had and tried to put my own puzzle pieces together to try and figure out what it is all about. What is this meaning to Dave Scott? And why has this happened to me? And that's the way I'm looking at it. I'm not looking for answers from the government. I know those answers are never going to come. Is it fun to be a part of it? Absolutely. Is it fun to try and see how it turns out? Absolutely it is. But I'm not someone who needs to have somebody holding my hand saying, or validating what I saw. And I realize that there are a lot of people out there who do need that. And I'm okay with that. I'm not saying that I'm better than anyone or somebody's better than me or whatever it may be. I think it's where we're all comfortable, preacher, on where we want to go with the research from our own experiences.
Exactly. And I know I feel for the people. I mean, okay, I go inside after seeing my UFO up at Mom and Dad's, and I tell them what I saw, and my dad's like, no. The best you can do, all you can do is share your experience. And, I'm not saying if you see something, keep it secret, but I'm also saying be prepared that your closest family is not going to be necessarily on board with what you're saying. And that's fine. There's no law that says they have to agree. I mean, my dad's 80 years old and his worldview is pretty well set in concrete by now. And a lot of people are like that. So no, a lot of times you're not going to have that external validation. If you're lucky enough to hang out with a group like we have, you're going to be meeting other people that have had that. So, that's your best bet, is get around like-minded people. But still, it's a personal experience. Usually you're by yourself, or maybe one or two other people, and it's not going to be this crowd mentality experience, and you have to get comfortable with that as an observer.
But there are a lot of people out there, Preacher, who don't know how to handle that experience or that encounter that they have, whether it's seeing a UFO way up in the stars or whether it's a close encounter of the third kind. There are people who are just searching for it. They've been mentally affected by it with stress, maybe, as Stu said, a little bit of PTSD that comes along with something that their mind cannot explain. So they do go searching for groups, and that's where I think somebody like MUFON really comes into play when it comes to the people who need it.
Yeah, I agree with that, because you can go find a group of people that will believe anything. Okay, and I guess what I'm trying to articulate here is you can find special interest groups that are willing to believe or jump to a supernatural or just a weird, non-esoteric explanation for everyday things. They see a pop can on the sidewalk and it's a message from spirits. Okay. You have to be a little discerning. And I think a group like MUFON, who has, they've got a certain credential or a certain street cred to them. They're not like a wackadoodle group, or they're interested in a scientific exploration, and they're gathering evidence. So it's good if you're going to get with something like that or look for a group, get one that's well grounded in some reality, or what we perceive as reality. And I think that's, MUFON. There are certain, there's some ghost groups like that they just, my own personal favorite, Forest Moon Paranormal. I mean, they're not going to laugh in your face about something, but they're going to look into it. They're not. There's a good way to look for support, and there's a bad way. And I think finding credentialed groups or groups that are at least emulating mainstream is a good place to start.
Do you think then that people are a little too panicked at time to try and figure out what has happened to them? Or do you think that they need to get those answers right away, and that's where they go searching for groups? And I'm not just saying MUFON. There are a lot of secondary and third string groups out there that are getting a lot of reports. Some of those groups are very, very talented, and others maybe not so much. But do you think that maybe we're jumping the gun a little bit in trying to hit up some of these groups before we've actually figured out in our own minds what it was we saw?
I think that's a very real danger when you are anything that happens paranormal like that. Yes, you've hit around the head. We want, as people, as humans, we want to know that if we see something or experience something that's so far out of the norm, and part of that's the fault of how our society enforces its worldview on us. Nobody's guilt, so it's not so much being guilty of, or the word I'm looking for, when something like that happens, yes, we have just now been singled off from the pack. We're not part of we're not part of the original crowd we started with. And it's, we don't like to be alone. So I think the danger is grabbing at straws and becoming part of a group that maybe we really shouldn't be a part of, but in that search for validation and that not wanting to be singled out and not wanting to be alone, we might fall into the wrong crowd.
Now, when you mention the wrong crowd, a lot of people may say, what is that crowd? What is that wrong crowd that we need to stay away from?
I think that's a lot of that is what you feel yourself. That's where discernment comes in. It's like, now I've made I know that Elizabeth Anglin channels, you channel. For me, falling in with a group of channelers that are, I'm not taking this the right way. I'm just saying there's legitimate people out there that know about channeling. And then there's the group that, hey, let's exploit people who channel or are seeking, advice from channel. I'm saying when you're looking for a group, as soon as money gets involved and I see a profit some kind of profit being generated, that throws up red flags for me. And that's just for me. I'm not saying those particular channelers aren't legit. I'm just saying if I see a profit motivation involved in something like that, I shy away. And my skeptic flag shows up.
So by the sounds of it, you're not a fan of the Two to Stars Academy.
Well, I'm not a fan of people that make a living out of it or set themselves up in a cult type situation. I'm not that much of a follower anyway, so when I get into that, when I see that kind of group, I am naturally going to shy away from that. Things like the Raelians. There's a lot of, to me, money spoils a lot of things as far as the paranormal goes. When you see that it's all about making a profit, gaining membership, and tapping into I almost feel like some of these groups are targeting our people out there. It's, this person wants validation. This person wants to feel connected. Let's show them that for $150 a year, they can be accepted. That's the kind of groups that I don't like and I don't approve of. And that doesn't really mean whether they're legit or not. It's just, to me, that's my litmus test. There's that yes or no logic point that happens. And at that point, when they're trying the first thing out of their mouth, or the second thing after, hi, glad you're here. By the way, it costs $100. Yeah. When the money comes in, it's the second thing they want to talk about. I'm not involved. I really ain't.
No, and like I said, and I have stated over the last 2 weeks since that conference happened, okay, to me it was more like a telethon. To me it wasn't about disclosure. It wasn't about, getting to the truth of the matter of what the government is holding. And, other reports have also stated that Tom DeLonge is stating that, we don't want UFOs around. Everything is, from what he has learned, is evil and malevolent and not good for what is happening here on the planet. And apparently they are scared of us due to our nuclear weapons for protection, and they're worried that we're going to put nuclear weapons in space. Hell, I'm worried if we're going to put nuclear weapons in space along those lines, if we don't already have them up there already. But does it even make sense on what they're talking about? Because I've been trying to put this together, and 2 and 2 just is not adding up to 4 for me. What do you think?
That whole I don't want to defame somebody, but to me, after the last 2 weeks of looking at it, I'm, in a nutshell, I see somebody who wants relevance and has figured out he can tap into a certain mindset and get his relevance back. And, face it, if you're part of a rock band or a movie crew, there's a certain amount of ego, and our ego likes to be stroked for the most part. And if that goes away, so that band you were in has faded out, or that movie group you were with, I think some of these people will find anything they can do to find relevance again. And that's where I think the motivation for that is. Cooper was talking to me as soon as it happened, and it struck me as I have been trying to get back in the media and make some money off of it.
I think the thing that I really don't like about it is, for some reason, and I realize there are people struggling all over the place around North America. The economy has not been good for a decade plus. And I get that there's a lot of people, who are struggling, to find food on the table or to pay the bills or find money for rent each month. It is difficult out there. And I guess one of the things that I have a real issue with, and maybe it's just me, and if you're in the chat rooms or if you're on Twitter at #SpacedOutRadio, let me know what you think. But this is a field where there isn't a lot of money. There's not a lot of people investing into this. There is not a lot of people who are well off, so to speak, in this field. All right? And when you are hitting up, lack of the better term, the poor for even $200 per share, it is difficult for me to accept that. Because, like I said, there are a lot of people struggling in this field. And they've had experiences that they can't explain. They've had multiple encounters that have affected them. Maybe it's given them PTSD or other illnesses that they just cannot figure out why this is happening to them, and it's affected their entire lives, and maybe they cannot work over it. I mean, we've had on this show Karina Sables, who detailed account after account of her abductions that happened with her and then her children and now her grandchildren. She has such PTSD over this, she can't hold a job. And she struggles day to day. And when I see people like that who are trying to figure out what is going on and seeing the lack of money that is actually in this field, or people's taking their last $25 to go buy a book or some sort of audio tape or something along the lines where maybe they can learn. Hitting people up for $200, and I realize that's probably the lowest that they could go on the shares, is not cool to me, especially when you have a bunch of people who on that panel who are probably millionaires themselves. Go get your big boys to help us out. You know what I'm saying?
Well, and it still, for me, reeks of exploitation. If you're that confident, and I don't believe that, okay, you and I personally, we know Elizabeth Anglin, an abductee experiencer. We know our Keith Andrews personally. We see that there's another side to this. It isn't high profile, grabbing money and exploiting. And I think that that's the problem, is that these people are wicked smart in that they have seen that there's a desperate population of people who want answers. They've got the answers, but they want it, like we were talking about earlier, validated. And I feel like a group or a movement like what Tom DeLonge is starting is just exploiting that need. And I do not abide by that. I will say that up front. I do not think that that's correct. If you're that open and you're that convinced of what you're saying is right, you would get out there and say it for free, or share it for free, or give your information for free, like Elizabeth Anglin, like our Keith Andrews and some of our guests we've had. It shouldn't be about the money. That just reeks of exploitation all the way through.
I want to direct everybody after the show to go onto YouTube and go check out Tim Doyle's UFO Seekers videos and his channel there. He has done an absolute breakdown through work he found on the SEC down in the United States about breaking down the shares and what it all means to people who are investing into the stars. So if you were having thoughts about donating the $200, do your homework. There's a reason why so many ufologists right now are not jumping on this bandwagon. And I think that is cause for concern when it comes down to it. Wouldn't you, Preacher? If your colleagues are shooting it down, it's probably not something you want to be involved with?
Yeah, and I try to live my, I do a lot of eBay trading, and I do a lot of things on Craigslist because I'm always looking for a bargain. But one thing I have discerned over the years is if it sounds too good to be true, 99.9% of the time it is too good to be true. And if you have a group of friends that you trust that are all telling you, don't throw your money away on that, listen to them. Because here's what I feel like what's happening with this. If it's legitimate, the truth is going to come out. Whether you paid your $200 or $10,000, whatever, the truth is going to come out. Wait for it. There's a lot of cases where things like this have caused a dust up. It was the latest, greatest thing. Everybody was convinced it was legit, and a year later, they're sitting there holding an empty bag. So, yeah, use your discernment, use your friends' discernment, and if a lot of people are saying, and I mean people you trust, the kind of people that if you ask for advice, they think about it, they don't give you a knee-jerk, oh, don't do that type of thing. But if you have people that you trust their opinions, my thing is, don't ask me for my opinion if you have you have no intent on listening to me. So I would say that if, by and large people are saying, no, I think that's a scam, it's not going to hurt you to back out, to not be involved. Because you're actually, if the truth is out there, the truth will come out. There's going to be a point where it's out there for free. And, just be patient and wait for that.
I would fully agree. Fully agree with you. And this leads to BTO's question. He says, one questions the motivation with varying groups. Everyone needs money, but it is based on money. But is this, a.k.a. Tom DeLong's group, based on money, or is it really based on seeking truths, evidence, etc.?
My short answer for that is it's about the money. I'm sorry. And my job as the spaced out radio scientist and as the S4 scientist is to be the voice of skepticism, not disbelief. Don't throw me in there with the debunkers. I mean, anybody that's listened to this show more than 3 times knows that I have experienced things. I mean, just as recently as coming back home from the Paracon in Concrete, Washington, I experienced things. But I'm still skeptical. I'm going to look for a prosaic answer. Because chances are, if it was something prosaic or, it wasn't supernatural, the truth is probably going to be weighted toward the evidence that you see. But don't necessarily throw it, don't discount something that's paranormal just because it's paranormal. I mean, after all 100 years ago, look at what would have been considered paranormal. Going to the moon or satellites in our orbit was the stuff of tall tales and paranormal. Now it's everyday life. As we evolve as a species, as our detection methods get better, as our science grows, what is now considered paranormal or science fiction is going to, that pool is going to narrow down. I mean, think of the Star Trek communicator. We've got those in our pockets. You can buy one for less than $20. It's called a cell phone. It's a matter of, I think it was Buzz Aldrin that said, looking into the universe is like having a match in the dark, and the further you move the match, the more is revealed. And I think that's how we have to look at this. Right now, we don't have an explanation for some of the things that happen. It's coming. We aren't, you look at the news, it doesn't look like we're evolving, but basically as a species, we are evolving, and our technology is giving us more insight into the world around us. Our physicists, the open-minded, there's smart brains out there right now that grew up with the science fiction of today, that are looking for answers, and they're going to find them. It's just a matter of not demanding your answers now and being willing to wait for them and help research if that's what you want to do. And that's what we have to realize. That I guess what I'm saying is what's today's science fiction or fantasy is tomorrow's buy it at Walmart for next to nothing. You just have to be willing to wait.
And I've put that link from YouTube in the Spreaker chat room. I've also put it on Twitter as well as the SOR Space Travelers. I'm going to put it in Revolution Radio as well, because I really do believe that people need to check out this link about what is happening with the To the Stars Academy. And you know what? I hope they are doing it for the right reasons. I really do. I got my fingers crossed that hopefully this is something that can come to fruition here in regards to bringing out some sort of disclosure, but I don't know if that's the purpose anymore. I really don't know if that's the purpose anymore, rather than, if they're trying to take a page out of Richard Branson's book or Elon Musk's book. I mean, these are guys who are throwing hundreds of millions of dollars and putting their billions on the line for these types of projects, and to crowdfund a topic like this, I don't think that's the way we should be going.
Yeah, to me, here again, the natural skeptic in me, I see more of a profit motivation than a search for truth. And I'm like, I hope I'm wrong. But here again, if they are looking for the truth and they find the truth, whether you gave them $200 or not, Eric Cooper keeps me apprised of how much money Tom DeLonge has raised almost on a daily basis. If I had the money that man has with my scientific background, I could get you an answer. I think he's got money that, I could only dream of at this point. So I think if it's a legit cause and they really are looking for the answers, they should be able to find them with what they have now.
Well, we'll soon see where this goes, and it's going to go one of two ways. They're either going to do great, and they're going to bring a lot of information regarding UFOs, disclosure, the meaning that this planet is being visited by spaceships from other worlds, or it's going to go the absolute other way, where it's just another cash grab. I don't see it being anything in between.
I'd have to agree with that. It's going to be a true litmus. It can only go one way or the other. One, too many people are watching it. taking the same wait and see attitude you and I have, for it to, the first time it looks like it was a money grab, the cat's going to be out of the bag, so to speak. There's too many people observing this, too many people who want the answer. And one of the flaws I have in it is he's already proceeding, to me, it seems to me he's proceeding with the answer he wants to produce in mind already. And that kind of flaws it. I don't think that they're all evil. I don't think everything to do with, like our Keith Andrews said, if they wanted our planet, they'd have it. There wouldn't have to be any of this subterfuge or any of this coy crap. They are so much further advanced than we are that if the end game is we want a planet full of slaves and we want their resources, they could do it. The fact that they can get here at all with the power that requires to go past the speed of light, to get past that, what we perceive now as a cosmic speed limit. They're doing it. That means they're as far advanced of our technology as we are above a Stone Age man. And, really, if you think about it, if you took a squadron of elite troops from the U.S. Army, took them back to England during the Viking invasions, King Alfred's time, it wouldn't take 100 of us to subdue that whole continent. So the same applies to this ET presence. So no, I don't see that it's this evil takeover bid, because they wouldn't have to work that hard to do it. It would be pretty much like Independence Day, except we wouldn't be fighting them off with anything we have conventionally. They'd be here, we'd be done.
and I would agree with you on that. If they've got the technology to get here, and they've got technology to whip through wormholes and create them and whatever they are doing to get here, they would obviously have the ability to take us over very quickly. And the idea that DeLong and the others are saying that they are afraid of our nuclear weapons, I don't buy that whatsoever. I don't buy it whatsoever.
We had a guest on that talks about how they can turn our silos on and off just at will, just to show us who's boss. And if we haven't had that guest on, I know that there's more than one person out there who had worked in a nuclear silo that had that experience. I mean, our own infrastructure isn't hardened, like David Adair was saying. If they could, it wouldn't take a tenth of the energy and technology at these off-worlders beck and call to subdue us, because we're just not in that league. It literally is Godzilla versus Bambi.
And I know people are getting sick of this topic. They're sick and tired of everywhere they turn. It's Tom DeLong this, Tom DeLong that. I can tell you right now, tomorrow will be 2 weeks, or pardon me, Wednesday would be 2 weeks since I put in the media request to have either Tom or someone from his team come on this show to discuss this. Yet they've already done the circuit of all of their media friends. The great George Knapp, who I admire greatly, and you'll never hear me say anything bad about George Knapp.
Nope, same here.
All right. He's done Jimmy Church, and he's done interviews with his buddy over at the Huffington Post, Leslie Keane, and I believe Linda Moulton Howe as well. And like I told all of you just a couple weeks ago, the way the media works is when you have a press conference and you want to get that message out, it's great that somebody broke the story. George Knapp broke the story. But when you have a press conference, now it's your time, when you go public, It's your time to step in front of the camera, in front of the microphones, answer your phone to interviews on this topic. You can no longer play favorites with the media. And that's exactly what they are doing. That's exactly what they're doing, is they are taking the safe way on people who are affording them the luxury, rather than answering the tough questions that need to be asked about this project. And I'm excited about the project. I want it to go. I'm an experiencer myself. Okay? I want to know what is going on, why this is happening to me. But on the same side, you cannot be so hypocritical towards the media, especially the alternative, when you're hitting those same alternative people up for money. And I'm sure there are people in our chat rooms and our audience of about 140,000 people a night that would love to hear from Tom DeLonge, to hear what his story is. Why do you need my $200 or more? And yet, he's not doing it. His PR person hasn't even got back to us yet. And when we send out a request, Preacher, you know, you've helped me with bookings, okay? We send out a very professional email to PR companies, to authors, to researchers, to whomever. We send out a very professional email telling them what the show is about, what we're looking for, and a lot of times we've actually had compliments on the way we asked for an interview. And to not respond in a story that is potentially this big, I find it very crass.
To me, that just sort of backs up my feeling that it's more about it's more about exploitation than getting the truth out. Trust me, if I had that smoking gun proof, or had that, if I was in that position, there's not a podcast, there's not an internet radio program, there's not a TV show that I wouldn't be out there on trying to get the word out if I believed in it that strongly. So to me, the fact that they don't want to, it's almost like the guest and I got some of these too. It's like, well, how big's your audience? What does that matter? If there's only 3 people listening to us, that's 3 people that you as a presenter now have unrivaled, uncensored exposure to. And in a subject this big, we need everybody we can get. And if they're not wanting to respond, or, we're not big enough, or, whatever their reason, that tells me that it's about the money.
That's what I'm thinking as well. That's exactly what I'm thinking as well. And Donna is asking, how is what they are doing any different than what a used car salesman would do on the lot?
Lee, okay. Good question. At least a used car salesman is trying to put into your possession a tangible asset. If the salesman does his job correctly, your money goes from your pocket to his, but you get something out of it. And to me, what this whole campaign is about is, I'm getting the money, you're getting an IOU that is not legally binding, or you're not getting any value for your money, as far as I can see. At least with a car salesman, you're getting a car. This guy's not even giving you a clunker car.
Well, he is giving you a potential anti-gravity spaceship that you'll never get to ride in.
No, thanks. I'll build my own. No, and I only mean that half jokingly, because I have a friend of mine that I was in the Navy with. I've been trying to I know about where he's at. I'm trying to get in contact with him. he was 20 years ahead of the curve on this stuff. And we as his friends all kind of, let's take care of little Scotty because he's obviously delusional. But as I have seen things more like 30 years now, and I have seen the mainstream start to take on some of the things that this guy was talking about 30 years ago. It's, I feel like I kind of missed the boat on this. That, maybe there's people out there. I mean, there's a guy that has a car that runs on water, and he's not asking for $200 for an investment. And you might get a car. This guy, it's like, hell, I'll show you how to build the darn thing. You can build your own. I mean, those are the kind of people that I think we should be throwing our money and our attention behind. The ones that are saying, to borrow an expression from the UK, jam tomorrow, that's like a pyramid scheme. It's a snake oil sale.
No, and I would agree with that. I would totally agree that there is something a little bit fishy with it going on, but you know what? We're going to wait and see what the public decides what is going to happen. And I think at the end, it's going to be very interesting to see where they go with it. Because, I mean, frankly, looking at it right now, they have 888 investors for $491,356. I don't think that's enough to fill a quarter tank on this right now with fuel.
No. I don't think... One, the approach of keeping the truth back set up a red flag for me. Just do anybody can do a Google search or a YouTube search on Searle effect or anti-gravity, and I don't think there needs to be all this cloak and dagger secrecy and all this big budget about it. The fact that it can be done, we see the evidence with our own eyes that it can be done. When it comes right down to it, it's probably not that hard. We just haven't looked. I think our own paradigm in physics is keeping us from looking. Or looking in the right directions.
Craig is asking in the Spreaker chat room, Dave, are you bitter? No, I'm not bitter. I'm not bitter at all. What I want for our audience here is a fair crack at proper journalism. That's what I want. I want a crack at proper journalism. That's like going into, okay, I'm going to simplify it. When I was in sports as a sports reporter, okay, the PR person would lead out all the athletes, okay, into the dressing room. So let's say, I'll remember the biggest scrum I was ever in. It was Mario Lemieux's return to Vancouver for the first time since he had retired and since he had cancer. Biggest scrum I've ever been in. There was like 60 people in that scrum. Okay, the fact is they made him open to the media. And what they are doing is they are keeping the media closed. How many times on this show have we talked about being open with the media? We're a media outlet. Our listeners deserve the opportunity to have someone answer the questions. Because in the end, they're your questions as well. And if they don't want to answer them from To the Stars, they're doing not only themselves a disservice, but their potential audience and their potential backers and financial supporters a disservice as well. Preacher, I've got Mr. Bumblefoot on. I want to say thank you so much for joining me tonight in hour number 3. What a fun time, bud.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure, and thank you very much for inviting me on. I always enjoy it.
Well, you know, that's what we do around here. We like to have fun. We like to keep things going. Because hour number 3 is just boring if it's just Dave. There's not enough Dave time. Or maybe there's too much. I don't know. Preacher, you hold on. We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL rocking in the background. Little brother is watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio. He rocks us in and out of every single show. So keep your horns up. Go download some of his music as well. It's well worth it. Tomorrow night on the program, David Weatherly is with us. We're going to get into everything cryptid, from Sasquatch to Black-Eyed Kids and everything in between, as David makes his bi-monthly appearance here on this show, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time. Everything at spacedoutradio.com. I want to say thank you to my great team who is helping put this show together, make it bigger and better every single night. But most of the thanks goes to you, the listeners, on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and hashtag Spaced Out Radio, in the chat rooms on Spreaker, on Facebook, and all over the place. Without you guys sharing our shows, talking about it to people, mentioning it on your profiles, going into other groups and saying, have you heard Spaced Out Radio yet? We wouldn't be getting any bigger. We wouldn't be getting any better. So I thank all of you for doing that. Because together, my friends, we own the night. I will talk to you in 21 hours from now. Have a good one. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. See ya.